I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like. What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here on Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to be your host. Big shout out to you, patrons. This goes out to you at least first. But thank you very much. We really appreciate you. To those who are already not patrons,
the fuck is he talking about?
Please, when you do see this all late and after all the already existing patrons have seen it, please go to blackpowermedia.org and click on the donate button and select Patreon and sign up. And then you too can be first on the list for early access to videos like this one. So one of the most requested people I'm asked to interview, perhaps oddly enough, is Professor Michael Hudson. And as I pointed out before, I've tried, we weren't able to make it happen, but as I'm saying with everyone, it doesn't really matter. It's not personal. As long as they continue to produce work that is publicly available, we can access it and make use of it. So that's what I've done here for us in this episode. I found a really good interview, and I've cut up a couple clips that I think are relevant for certainly my own work, and I think many of the interests of those of us on this platform. So I thought I would bring that here and chop it up a little bit. So let's go. All right, so we're going to pick up this interview with Carl Fitzgerald on his platform, where they take regular visits from Michael Hudson and have him respond to questions submitted to Patreon. And in this first response, where Hudson is talking about his early life as a leftist writer and so on and so forth, check out how he actually seems to be able to take credit for, or the blame rather, for the modern imperial arrangement or economic order, where Hudson paves the way. He shows the way for finance capital to take over the world. Check this out.
Winger, and I'd published in Ramparts magazine and Catholic left-wing magazines. But when I began to write it, and especially after Herman Kahn immediately hired me for the Hudson Institute to explain to the Defense Department and State Department how imperialism worked, I realized that only the United States was interested in how imperialism wanted to work is a How to Do It book. The last thing I thought I was writing was a How to Do It book. I thought I was writing what people had to do to get rid of it. And instead, people used the book, here's how to make sure it lasts forever.
Message!
So all I could do was watch and realize that there really wasn't a left wing anymore that talked about economic factors.
I've actually talked before about how unwittingly, whether we like it or not, many of us in academia who produce radical, even revolutionary work, but publish it through established academic journals and channels, that work is more likely than not going to be seen by those working against us than those who might be our target audience. So it's not surprising that consciously or not, wittingly or not, Hudson would seek to write a book that we know of as SuperImperialism, but that was used by the imperialist state to learn better than we have how to actually make this thing happen. And he, as we'll see, talks a little bit about moving off the gold standard and all of that they thought initially was not the move, but he apparently is part of the reason why they realized that was the move and would eventually do it, leading to the modern, again, world of finance capital dominating everything. It's pretty interesting.
Establishment of the dollar hegemony.
You mean dollar hegemony wasn't dumb luck? Well, yeah. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. They absolutely did not understand it. If you go back and look at the newspapers in August of 1971, everyone thought America has dominated the world economy ever since 1950, when it had 3/4 of all of the world's monetary gold. It was the America's holding of gold that enabled it to put England on rations, to enable it to dictate economic policies to other countries, because if they didn't have gold, they didn't have the backing for their domestic money in order to back the credit to create capital investment and develop themselves. They were still tied to gold as a commodity basis of their money instead of modern monetary theory, or realizing that money could just be created by greenbacks like the United States did in the Civil War. So nobody had anticipated how it would work. And since I was a balance of payments economist, I was able to say, well, what is the balance of payments going to look like, and where are countries going to put all of these dollars that are being pumped into the economy? What will France do? Now that France and Germany can no longer cash in the dollars for gold, what will they do? And it was pretty obvious that they were going to buy U.S. Treasury securities. And that's exactly what happened. Well, at that time, balance of payments was not a topic that was taught in any university of the country, nor were statistics taught. And everything that I'd learned about the balance of payments, I'd learned by Chase Manhattan sending me back and forth to Washington to meet with the Commerce Department's balance of payments statisticians, and they walked me through balance of payments accounting, which is very different from normal accounting, and all of the ideas of wash transactions and all of the ways in which the gross national product accounts distorted the actual financial flows at work. So I'd already written a monograph on translating the trade deficit and other parts of the balance of payments, foreign aid, military spending, into the actual financial flows as opposed to just the nominal value of trade. American oil imports all came from American companies, and only about 10% of the price of American oil imports ever left the country. The price was all paid in dollars, even though it was counted as an import and hence a trade deficit. It was counted as an inflow on other parts of the balance of payments, inflow of profits, inflow of exports that you'd use of equipment to produce the oil. So I'd spent all of my time starting with the oil industry, which was the major element of American foreign policy and of control of the balance of payments, going over in great detail the accounts of every single individual company. And I was the only person who in the country who did that. Chase had acted as the lobbyist for the oil industry to get them exempted from President Johnson's balance of payments controls that were announced in January 1965. And the companies all agreed to let someone who wasn't connected with any oil company or the industry to have a look at their internal reports. And since I was only 25 years old at the time, they figured I was innocent enough that I wouldn't spill the beans on any country's proprietary information, and I never did. I was the only. I had to lock all of the reports away. But by going through the micro statistics for Libya, for instance, they even had the money spent on typewriters as an expense, and whether the typewriters came from the U.S. or another country. I mean, it was really, really very detailed. So I spent 4 years at Chase doing nothing but balance of payments accounting. So I began to think in terms of the financial flows of balance of payments, and nobody else studied this. If you didn't work for either the Department of Commerce putting together statistics or for a bank, and at that time, banks actually had research departments, unlike today where they're public relations departments, but back then they had research instead of public relations. So that's where I learned what I could not have learned in any university.
So again, for me, I just think that initial clip is fascinating for what it says about Hudson's work being used by the Pentagon and those in power to learn how to improve and extend its imperial arm by moving off the gold standard, moving into finance and finance capital, also therefore allowing it to suppress the economies of Europe and to dominate the economies of Europe. And as we're going to see in this next clip, that's why, or part of the reason, or connected to the reason of that Hudson describes the conflict or the war between Russia and Ukraine and the United States involvement in all of that and support for Ukraine as a war against NATO.
I think the focus on Ukraine is really the wrong thing. What this is a U.S.-NATO war. It's a U.S. war against NATO. The effect of the war is for the United States to gain total control of Europe and to prevent Europe from the track that it was on, which was to trade and investment with the East, with Russia, with China, and with other Asian countries, and to put a wall around Western Europe and say you can only trade with the United States. Well, let's look at how this is going to collapse. Germany, which was the main supporter of the euro's balance of payments, now in the past had imported oil and gas and raw materials from Russia, and it had obtained the foreign exchange to pay for these materials by exporting automobiles, washing machines, and consumer goods to Russia. So there was a kind of circular flow, raw materials, gas to Europe, and exports back to Russia. Now this is not taking place anymore. Instead, Europe has to buy its gas as liquid natural gas from the United States at about 6 times as much, and its automobiles can no longer be made in Germany because you need power to make them. You need heat, you need gas and oil in order to make fertilizer, in order to make glass, in order to make other industrial goods. So Europe has lost its ability to export its industrial goods. So instead of having balanced trade with the East, it has a chronic deficit with the United States. The United States is not going to permit Germany and European countries to finance their payment for oil and food and fertilizer from the U.S. by buying German exports, just like in the 1920s. Same problem. It's going to be very protectionist and try to say, well, German industry can move its automobile companies to the south. It can produce its exports, its cars here. Or maybe Germany can move to Iran or China or somewhere else, which doesn't look very likely. But if the companies move to the United States, then they'll be employing American labor. I don't think the Americans are going to let Germans begin to cross the Rio Grande along with the Latin Americans. So you're going to really have no means of support for the euro when it's going to fall probably below the dollar. I can see the euro falling to 90% or even 85% cents on the dollar in a year or two. So the effect of the war has been to essentially conquer the European economies and make them captives of the United States. The effect on Russia has been to create such a revulsion in the global majority, the rest of the world, that they say, my heavens, if we let Americans influence our policy, they would like Taiwan to die to the last Taiwanese. They'd like Pakistan or India to die to the last Pakistani, or Kazakhstan to die to the last Kazakh. They're all withdrawing and finally coming together to create an alternative to the dollar-based order. And I think historians will say, well, Biden has been probably the worst president in modern history, even worse than Obama. But it really isn't Biden, because Biden is just a front man for the whole deep state, for the whole neocon group behind him. And it's really the neocon mentality, the sort of the last gasp of militant finance capitalism that is self-destructive of this whole American plan. And instead of cutting up, dividing, and conquering Russia and other countries, they've isolated the United States, not Russia. They've isolated Europe along with the U.S. Dollar area, and they've integrated the whole rest of the world, realizing they have a common future that lies in quite a different direction.
So first of all, let me just back up quickly, because there's something that I meant to address, or to add, just for a little bit of clarity, because I wasn't clear initially, and I don't know if any of you are not clear, and I don't know to what extent this will help. But it's important, I think, to understand that when he was previously talking about balance of payments and his work on behest of Chase Manhattan and the banks sending him to the Commerce Secretary to discuss the balance of payments accounting, what he's looking at, according to Investopedia, is that balance of payments, also known as the balance of international payments, is a statement of all transactions made between entities in one country and the rest of the world over a defined period, such as a quarter or a year. It summarizes all transactions that a country's individuals, companies, and government bodies complete with individuals, companies, and government bodies outside the country, end quote. And why I think, if I understand this correctly, and why it's so important to Hudson's work, is that, unlike, as he was saying, just seeing sort of the grand totals of where wealth ends up, or what sectors of the economy, nationally or globally, money ends up, seeing the exact payments, who is sending exactly what to where, in what amounts and in what currency, allowed him to see the way that the dollar was influencing the world, was helping expand U.S. influence in the world. So this next question that he gets from a Patreon supporter who joins them on screen really gets to one of the, obviously one of my core interests. So I was interested to see his response here.
So what is the role of propaganda, I guess, or your thoughts on it, and maybe how it's kind of changed since you entered the game? And
my J is for junk economics is all about propaganda and how to frame what is really happening in a false way, to make people have a set of categories that they think in terms of, that are not realistic categories, but are something with an Orwellian vocabulary, that are really just the opposite. So right now, with Biden economics in the United States, you have Democratic hacks like Paul Krugman, saying, well, why are people complaining? Everything is really, really great. They must be agents of Putin if they say they're not great. Well, he's denouncing 80% of the American population as agents of Putin. What he's saying is, who are you going to believe? Me with my Nobel Prize, or your eyes? And the role of propaganda is say, you may think that the economy is not doing well, but it's doing well for absolutely everybody in the country except you. You're a loser, and it's all your fault. You have not taken responsibility for your own fate, and everybody else is doing fine. Just look at the statistics. So why are you complaining that you're falling behind in your mortgage and on your credit card bill? You're really a bad person, and you're not patriotic if you don't vote for the Democratic Party, and let us continue to make you feel even worse while telling you that this is really better. There's joy in poverty. Think of the medieval saints who went into poverty and shoeless and went into the desert. You really can be you're doing much better off that way. That's propaganda, to make them confused about what's important in life. What really, are they doing better or not? Are they going to look at statistics, or are they going to think that what's happening to them is part of nature? Is the economy just making people poor because it's part of natural law that just some people are smarter than others, and the managerial professional managerial class is just plain smarter? And we're very sorry that you're poor and that you're behind, but you're just stupid. You haven't been educated in the right colleges because you were unwilling to take on enough debt so that you could get a good education and be smarter and not be the kind of loser that you are. But that's nature. It's just part of it. It happened to the dinosaurs. It's happened to other species. We're sorry and sympathetic for you, but it's your time is over. And if people can believe that, well, I guess there's nothing I can do about it. Let me take some opioids. Let me take some, and at least I won't feel the pain.
So yeah, right on. So obviously there's a couple things. I haven't read his J's for Junk Economics book, so I don't know exactly his full argument in around propaganda. Just again, the one piece that's missing in that is the specific role media are meant to play in an imperial colonial setting. Just the specific calling out of that function, that it is part of the weaponry, the array of military of a military apparatus that is meant to aid in the conquering of land territory and then shaping public opinion around that mission. So, but right on. And this is where I was thinking of. This is the white myth of black buying power argument. This is the white version of it. That and where he's talking about Krugman using his Nobel Prize status and New York Times status to as a weapon to basically back people up and make them accept his argument, his bona fides, and his justification for his analysis that people either don't understand or are encouraged just to agree with because of those bona fides. That's what I'm saying about whether it's a celebrity or a popular pundit or platform or someone who was able to use their style and their gift of gab to present a black capitalist analysis to black people as a solution. That's exactly what I'm saying here. They use their platform or an award or their position to have that replace any engagement with their analysis with just an acceptance of it blindly. And so I definitely appreciated his point there about Krugman. And previously, and I also like the way I've it's worked out that in my little editing here that the previous statement about Biden perhaps being the worst president in history, even worse than Obama. Notice he skips Trump. I think that's a good precursor or it was a good foreshadow of what's to come, and something that I think we can be left with here in terms of some encouragement towards the after party concept.
Question may get you going, but our new major Patreon supporter Anthony Dimitri says, can Bitcoin play a role in international settlements? If not, what currency can take place of the dollar in emerging markets?
No.
And maybe I should just say, how about blockchain rather than Bitcoin?
It's completely different. Blockchain, you know where the money is. Bitcoin and any cryptocurrency is like a mutual fund where you put the money in, but unlike mutual funds, you have no idea where the money is put. The whole idea, the philosophy behind Bitcoins is if you do peer-to-peer, then you can avoid the banking system, which you don't like. You can avoid the government security system, which people don't like. It'll be peer-to-peer. Well, the peer-to-peer is you to the person who's running, to Bankman-Fried, for instance. He's your peer. The money doesn't get put into a bank or a government security, it's put into his own personal bank account, and he gives it to his friends and politicians, or does whatever he wants, and you have no idea of what's happening to it. That's the problem. And if you look at Bitcoin going up and down, that is not a stable measure of value. You can see what happened when Ecuador tried to use Bitcoin. So
we covered that here recently.
It's just not suited. It's rife for criminal activity, and imagine what happens if you lose your the special address email address that you have to do. Then you've lost all of your national reserves. All that happened is the government building blows up, and Bitcoin gets billions of dollars. So no, it's not an appropriate investment.
Message.
The US dollar system, the greenback, is it going to continue to be the trading platform for international trade if energy inputs fell? Looks like this system is contingent on increasing fossil fuel use. What's the relationship of
certainly the U.S. Oil companies, the oil majors, along with French, English, and Dutch companies, have been a major factor in the balance of payments. But now you're getting oil from Russia. Iran will be back in the market. The Near East, they're all shifting as rapidly as they can out of the dollar. They still hold a lot of dollars in their savings, and the real issue isn't what the currency they're going to use for to denominate their trade. Obviously, it's going to be each other's currencies. The question is, what are the oil exporting countries going to do with the almost the $1 trillion they're already holding in U.S. Treasury securities and American stocks and bonds as the result of all of the past oil and gas that they've sold? How is this dollar overhang going to be resolved? How is there going to be musical chairs? Who gets to jump on the chair first, with the chair being take your money out and convert it into gold, or convert it into some kind of property outside of the range of U.S. grabbers to appropriate it and do to the Near Eastern countries what it did to Iran or Venezuela or Russia, and just simply grab the money. You're having a phased, slow walk out of the dollar. They're afraid of doing it very fast, or the United States will simply wipe out all of its debt. In which case, these countries would wipe out all of their debt to U.S. bondholders and U.S. corporations, and in a way, you'd have a vast clean slate. And in a way, that's probably the only legal way of resolving all of this process. Just a whole new beginning, debt-free, with new relationships among different countries. That will mean that there will have to be a whole new set of banks in the West, and also throughout Asia. So there's, I think, the countries that are discussing what the future will be realize the need to decide, what kind of a financial system do we want? What kind of a property system do we want? Who's going to own the oil and the gas and the mines that in the past were privately owned, and who paid out all of their profits to France in euros, or to the United States in dollars? All of this there's going to be a whole restructuring of property ownerships and finance throughout the entire world. That's really what de-dollarization is, not just using a different currency for trade. The big thing is capital account, much more than trade account. It's not simply that you want to add a third party. Of course, you can fight and get Cornel West on the Green Party ballot, so you can actually have an alternative vote. But it's even more than a third party. You want to end the Democratic Party no matter what? You want to, that's the only way that you can sort of starve the beast. And politically, I think that has to be the main aim in the United States. The Democratic Party wants to blow up the world. They're totally, they're unreformable. You have to realize that there's no way that the duopoly, the Republicans and Democrats, are funded by the same class, the same people. The job of the Democrats is to prevent any left-wing criticism of the Republican Party so it can move further and further and further to the right. So you have to break that duopoly, and the only way to do it is breaking either one party or the other, and the Democratic Party is the most dangerous party to break because it's the best at the propaganda, and it's the most willing to undertake political assassination and all of the other dirty tricks that we've seen.
That was fascinating. And among the many things that I think that he said that were interesting, again, is this approach to the Democratic Party as being the bigger problem. I think many of us have said a version of this in different ways, that the performance of being the party for the people has led us into a very dangerous situation. Obviously, we're not advocating the rightward move to the Republicans, but this is one of at least several reasons why I and some of us have been talking about a variety of, or a variation of approaches to an after party, a Malcolm X approach to electoral politics, something else that would lead to more radical and militant forms of other kinds of organization and a better analysis of how all of this works. So I thought that was interesting. Elsewhere in the interview, I mean, I encourage people to check out the whole thing. He goes into a lot, again, about the history of economics, the history of the expansion of the dollar, the purposes for it. And one of the points that he brings up that I think I'll mention in closing, and invite more discussion through comments and future shows and episodes that focus on Hudson's work, is this idea that the only real way to correct all of this, as he says himself, is through, as he said, quote, revolution, and bringing the so-called balance of payment, the debt, to zero, reducing the balance of payments to nothing, starting from scratch. Again, thanks to those who keep suggesting that we review Michael Hudson's work. I think it's quite valuable, including this particular discussion. Thank you once again to the patrons of our platform. Big ups to you. And to those who are not able to support in that way, thanks to you as well. And as always, peace, only if you're willing to fight for it. Like Fred Hampton used to say, catch you next time here on I Mix What I Like and throughout the BPM platform. Peace.